Welcome to Savage River Research Lectures in Computer Science. I'm Tom Sheehan, and this is the first of a set of lectures covering Java 1. If you're interested in more information about the sponsor of these lectures, the URL for Savage River Research is shown here. It's on the first screen of every lecture. If you visit the site, you'll be taken to this home page, and if you scroll down, there's a brief description of Savage River Research. If you're interested in the URLs for all of the currently available open courses, click here. But before you can start coding in Java, you have to prepare your computer to actually do those tasks. And there are two steps in that process. The first step is to download and install an IDE, an integrated development environment, which is nothing more than a large executable that allows you to write Java code and convert that code into a working program. The second step is to download and install the Java Runtime Environment and the Java Development Kit, both of which are from Oracle. So open Google and enter the query term Eclipse download. The Google search should return something like this. But note the date stamp I placed on the screen, 12/15/21. The date these slides were created. Both Oracle and Eclipse upgrade their products and modify their screens routinely, and their appearance will vary over time. So this lecture will be revised on 4/15/22 to show the sequence of download screens as they appear on that day. Now click on the link, Eclipse IDE for Java Developers, which results in this screen. Put your cursor on the scroll bar and note that on all of my slides, I will be using a gold arrow outlined in red to represent the cursor, just to make it more visible. Now slide down to this point on the page, and I'm interested in 64-bit Eclipse for Windows. But Eclipse downloads are also available for 32-bit Windows, the Mac OS, and 32 and 64-bit Linux. All of my lecture slides are based on the 64-bit Windows version, so there may be slight cosmetic differences if you're using another operating system. However, the downloads for those other variants should closely follow what I'll show you now. So click here, which will produce this screen. Now, the site for the download will vary, but just take whatever's showing and move your cursor to download, which on a Windows system will produce the pointing finger, while the associated URL will be shown below. The download for the installer should go fairly quickly, and usually you see a request for donations, and I'd encourage you to donate. It's a worthwhile organization. But Eclipse isn't going to send you an inferior product if you don't donate. You can find the file you just downloaded by clicking here, which produces this pop-up. Or, my recommendation is that you open Windows File Explorer and navigate to Downloads, where you'll find this executable. As we'll see shortly, this is not the Eclipse Java IDE. This is just an executable that will install that IDE. And the reason I want you to approach it this way is so you can run the installer as the system administrator. And the reason I want you to run it as sysadmin is that it will allow Eclipse to set environment variables that allow the IDE to function smoothly. So move your cursor onto the executable and right-click to get this drop-down menu. Now, if you are not on your own machine, on your own home network, you are probably not the system administrator, and you should not see this option. If that's the case, I doubt that you'll be able to proceed with the download. Perhaps you can. If you can, give it a try. If not, consult your system administrator and ask her to look at this YouTube video and advise you on the proper course of action. If you are sysadmin, click on Run as Administrator, and you'll get the installer display that will quickly morph into an options screen. This installer is used for a variety of Eclipse products, but what we need is the Eclipse IDE for Java developers. So click here, it's selected, and we get a confirmation screen. A confirmation screen that will allow you to specify a different product or different installation folder. Don't change either one. Just click on Install, which changes the display to the green install bar. Now, the actual Eclipse IDE is a large set of files, and on most installations, I get a progressing very slowly screen. Ignore it. Just sit it out, and sooner or later, it will change to this screen. So move your cursor to Launch and click, and you should get the Eclipse IDE Start screen. It'll run for a while, followed by this screen, which allows you to select the directory where you want to keep your Java files. My suggestion is that you select Browse, and if you right-click on the C drive or any folder you want to use to store your Eclipse work, you can create a new folder and label it Java_1. Now, I suggest that name because that's the name that's going to appear on all of my slides for the first semester Java courses. The new Java_1 folder appears in the selection box, so click Select Folder, and that's pasted back to the Select a Directory as Workspace screen. Click on Launch, and eventually, sometimes it takes a while, eventually the Eclipse Welcome screen will appear. Hide the Welcome screen by clicking here, and you have the primary Eclipse screen, the one in which we will do most of our work in the first semester Java course. And in the next lecture, Lecture 2, we'll write and test our first Java program using this IDE. That's Integrated Development Environment. But before we do that, we need to do one more download. So minimize the Eclipse screen, and Eclipse is now reduced to this small icon on the Windows bar at the bottom of your screen. You can bring it back up when you complete this lecture and start Lecture 2. But right now, we're going to open Google and query download JDK, which should find this site. Make sure you're at the correct site. Click here, and you should be taken to the Oracle download site for the Java JDK, the Java Development Kit. Move your cursor to the scroll bar and come down about one page. But note that all these downloads are for machines running on the Linux operating system. However, there are two other options, the Mac OS and Windows. So if you're running on Windows, move your cursor to the Windows link, and the cursor again changes to the pointing finger indicating a live link, and click, which takes you to the Windows links. Now, the research work at Savage River involves the pursuit of some fairly difficult computational problems. And we work primarily in Windows, coding in both Java and C++, and occasionally C when the problem domain involves system-level work. Consequently, this initial lecture for the open courses focuses on setting up Eclipse and Java on Windows. However, you should easily be able to do an analogous setup on a Mac box or a Linux box. Once you do that, you'll be able to follow the lectures from 2 forward. The screens, the code, and the behavior of the Java programs will be the same no matter which of these 3 environments you're running. So, if you're on a Windows box, move your cursor to the x64 installer and click here. The installer will take a few minutes to download, and while it's downloading, Windows will run this clock. This clock which estimates the minutes left. But don't take it too seriously. The minutes left may bounce up and down, but it's a sure gauge that the download is still running. Eventually, the clock disappears, and you can be sure the installer is in your download folder, ready to go. So, open the download folder, where you'll find the JDK-17_ Windows-x64_ executable. Move your cursor to the executable and right-click it to get this drop down. Then select Run as System Administrator. From this point on, the installer will do its job, then notify you when the installation is complete. Now, if you already have the JDK installed and maybe you just didn't know it, Oracle will so inform you. But there's no need to reinstall, so in that case, just click No. If you don't already have the JDK, you won't see this screen. Okay, shut down Windows File Explorer and Oracle's Java download screen. Now, if you minimize the Eclipse screen, you should see this Eclipse icon at the bottom of your screen. And if you click it, Eclipse is back up. If you continue with these courses, it will quickly become obvious that you either need a large screen, or better yet, 2 screens of at least 23 inches each, because you'll run Eclipse while listening to YouTube and often bringing up Oracle's Java documentation, which will be introduced in Lecture 2 and in a couple of subsequent lectures. The only way to learn Java, or any other programming language, is to study the syntax of the language and write programs of increasing complexity to test and reinforce your knowledge of that syntax. The Savage River lectures will teach you Java syntax, but that's a futile exercise unless you're writing code in increasingly complex problem domains that require the use of that syntax. If you're not writing code, you're wasting your time. Okay, this is what we covered in Lecture 1, and this is where we're going in Lecture 2.